So, Holly, let's get into the program here. We thank you for taking time and downloading the program, viewing it on social media, however you're capturing the content. Thank you very much. Now, many of us are, if we're listening to this, we probably have camped in some form or fashion, either on public or private land. And for those who are camping on public land or state forest, state parks,
even national parks, and then there's sometimes county parks or
municipalities, that type of thing.
Things like that.
Not all of these are the same. And not all the time that you see what you see on the internet is true, because you can frame a shot to make it look real nice when you've got junk outside of that framework.
Absolutely.
And now this show is based out of Wisconsin, so your mileage may vary based on where you're camping at. And with our state campsites, majority of them, you have privacy. There's shrubbery, there's trees, there's foliage that's a barrier between you and the next campsite. Now, it may be only 3 foot or 2 foot, but it's not a parking lot with fire pits and picnic tables, as we see, if you're familiar with, most of you are, Steve Wallace, Camping with Steve. He camps up in Canada, and it's just a parking lot, basically, of campsites, and it's concrete and fire pits, and it's just an open field. And we've watched other people in Iowa and Nebraska, same thing.
It's kind of mind-blowing
what
to me.
Privacy is, or what fun is that?
Right, because I camped from a young age in Wisconsin, and I kind of understand why people come here to camp, because we have a lot of trees, a lot of foliage, a lot of just really beautiful natural resource spaces. And if you like the big open prairies to camp, then that's perfect for you. But for me, I need to have I need to be in the trees.
Well, at least out of visual. Now, you hear the neighbors, you hear the kids, you hear the party, the happy birthday, all of that.
We really did hear a birthday party.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see what kind of cake it was. And now we tent camp. We have currently a 10 by 12 Ozark Trail wall tent. It's a little more work to put up, but the advantage is you can walk in. We've got a queen size pop-up mattress cot, and you have room. It's like a small cabin. You can walk in. You can do things. You're not cramped. If it's raining, you can bring the food in and sit around the table. We've got videos on what we bring, which is probably way too much, but it's worth it.
The first time Joey and I went camping together, my mom kept telling us to bring a tarp because it was going to rain, and she apparently even told my sister that she was concerned because we weren't going to bring a tarp.
Because we're not allowed to. We've never been in rain before, apparently.
We're going to melt.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, but I knew that our tent was quite large, and I figured if it was raining, we would just go
in the tent.
Right. And so, lo and behold, it rained, and we were in the middle of eating dinner, and we just drug our chairs on our little table in there.
Which we'll get to in segment 2 on what things.
But we didn't need that tarp. But that's okay. She was trying to be
camping. I grew up on a farm, and we never camped. I turned a solid structure or a building into a cabin, and that's where kind of deer camp was for all my friends and the guys, and that's what we did. But you camped, and from you're camping as a young person to now, or when we camp, it seems to be very, very different. Night and day different.
Yeah. What do you mean?
The experience, the equipment, the fun of camping now compared to camping when you were young with your siblings. And
well, first of all, I didn't have to plan much. I just packed up my clothes or whatever. And
your stories just don't seem fun. The stories.
What are you talking about?
Just the equipment came substantially better.
Yeah, for sure. Like we
you didn't have a wall tent.
No wall tent.
You probably had a tent just barely big enough for you to squeeze in.
Well, yeah, it was like I slept in a tent with my older sister, so it was probably what they say is like a 4-person tent. Or
4-person if you really like each other, 1 or 2 reasonably.
Right. So yes, it wasn't huge.
4-person in an emergency,
and you couldn't really stand up.
Yeah, you crawled in, crawled out, like these traditional little dome tents.
Right, and I liked it. It was fine, and we usually slept on the ground, or sometimes I think at some point we finally got an air mattress, but it was definitely a lot different. Now, some people consider what you and I do, quote unquote, glamping.
Glamping, yeah.
Which I wouldn't, and also I think realistically, Joey and I are both 40, and I have no interest in sleeping on the ground, and I'm not going to lie about that. So I'm okay with if people want to call us glamping. I've paid my dues. I've slept on the ground. I'm okay sleeping on a cot.
Well, yeah. And I mean, when we go, we take a substantial lot of stuff. I know there's some people that try to rough and tough it. But when we bought the first round, I guess is what you call what we bought, the first round of sleeping bags, and because if we advance our camping equipment, we're going to take it to the utmost level and get the top of the top. But we didn't skimp on pretty much anything that we've got.
No, we decided to.
We could have got the El Cheapo chairs, but we got the stuff that was going to last.
We looked at it as an investment,
right?
And I think that if you can do that, it's smart. And if you are. But perhaps maybe you aren't sure if you're going to like a certain piece of equipment. It might be okay to get the cheaper one if you're like, I might not use this a lot.
Right. And we've got a number of product reviews, not sponsored at all, on our YouTube channel, Time by the Tent. And we will tell you, I mean, I think the only, most of the stuff that we've got, we never did a review on the air mattress on the cot, but everything else has been top notch.
Right. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So
anyway, back to the campsite areas.
There's hip camps too. Well, let's talk about that.
So hip camp is kind of like an Airbnb / Vrbo, which is vacation rentals by owner, but it's for land to camp at. And I think sometimes you can rent cabins and tents and yurts and whatnot. But hip camp, you find a location and then you go camp there. And so Joy and I have experienced this where we just looked for land, and some of them have bathrooms, porta potties,
right? And
some of them have like teeny little amenities. They do take care of the trash.
Yeah.
Some of them will have the option to upgrade to purchase firewood, but then some of them say, just pull whatever wood you want out of the woods.
Some are literally in the backyard next to a open field and a little covey of woods. Others is a private land removed from the residence that you drive up, and there's a parking spot, and then there's trails to go to those particular campsites, and it's all marked and registered and all this stuff. So never have had a bad experience with a hip camp. However, a hip camp is about 2.5 times more expensive than a state park.
And I'm sure part of it is they're probably paying fees to hip camp.
But you're paying for a luxury of nobody's around.
Well, that's the thing, is that the last one that Joey and I went to in October on our last camping trip for the year, it was beautiful. We didn't see a soul for like 3 days.
Right.
And it was a walk-in site. We did have to go down this little hill.
It was about half-mile walk-in.
Yeah. It was a walk-in site, but it was just absolutely. If you like solitude when you're camping, I would recommend checking out hip camp.
Hip camp, or buy your own piece of property.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was nice, and it was a little bit harder because you knew that you had, if you did need to, like, we bring our own toilet, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. But other than that, if you need to shower or something like that, that's not an option. It's not like a state park where you can drive to a shower building. Like, you are definitely in that area. You're not going to have a convenient place to wash yourself, and you kind of just have to rough it like that.
Right.
But it's a lot of fun, especially if you do want the solitude.
And hip camps do not, I don't think that I've seen one, and of course I've not looked, do not have electricity amenities. State parks do. That's more of an expense than the what do they call it? Regular camps. I forget. There's a word there. Prehistoric, not prehistoric.
So going on that, if you have children and you're looking to camp and you want things that are of comfort for your children, or activities, recreation areas, things like that, state parks offer that. A lot of them have playgrounds, beaches, trails, like myriad of trails, shorter trails. There's one state park not too far from us that has this astronomy trail, and you walk along and it tells you about astronomy, and there's nature, fill out the card things, and a lot of great stuff. And then they also...
But if you've never camped in a state park, there's a noise level. Now, it's supposed to be quiet after 11 o'clock. But
you can complain to the camp host. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that
it fixes it.
It fixes it, but you do have that right.
'Cause people do activities, drink and excitement and party and that type of thing.
Right, absolutely. And that's another thing to keep in mind is you are not too far from the next campsite, and people can be loud.
Now, this is in Wisconsin where, as we talked earlier, there is a perimeter or a barrier or a barricade with trees and shrubs and stuff in 99% of the campsites and parks that we've been in. This is not the case in other places. So in other places, you can just look down and see the 17 other people camping because it's just a parking lot and or an open field. Here you can hear them, but you can't necessarily see them when it comes to camping. But there is a noise factor.
Right. So I think the biggest thing is to keep what?
And here in Wisconsin, you can, you pay online, you register online to pick a campsite. It's not like some of these places where you drive up, fill a card out, and you go find a site.
Well, you used to be able to do that.
And with Wisconsin websites, typically they'll give you 1, 2, or 3 images of that particular site and an aerial map. So you can kind of put your add things up and go, well, this site seems to be farther away from everybody else, so this might be the better option.
Also, like in Wisconsin, if you use Facebook, there is a state park group, and you can say like, hey, especially larger state parks, that this wing of the state park or whatever, do you recommend any sites that are more wooded or more open?
And people will tell you, no, don't go here or don't do that. Yeah.
And then it's also helpful to know sometimes, because if you perhaps are looking for something where you can walk to close by trails and whatever, then you can look at the map, but it might not give you the best idea, but you can ask other people.
So, just be aware that not everything you see on the internet or on Department of Natural Resources sites is as it may seem, because everything is slightly different. The best way to know what you're getting into is, like you say, go on a Facebook group or simply post on your Facebook group or your Facebook page and go, here's what I'm wanting to do. Does anybody have any bad or good experiences about going to this place? And they will tell you, because that's what the internet does.
Absolutely. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.